All right, so we're in the book of Yoel, in the book of Joel, and we're going through and it's giving us instructions on what changes we need to make to, huh? Oh, now?
Is it turned on?
It's turned on. Yeah. Where is it? Yeah. Did I mute it again?
No,
Uh-oh.
that doesn't seem. Doesn't seem to be on.
Okay. So we can crank up the tower if you'd like. The antennae might be broken. We're pausing for station identification.
Now a word from our sponsor.
No, a word from our sponsor. Right. So, hello? Testing, testing, testing. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Hello? Uh-oh, there it is. Is it green when it does green things? Oh. All right. Okay. There we go. All right. So we've been talking about the prophet Joel. And in the prophet Joel, he's describing swarms of locusts that were destroying the crops. But in our studies, we've been considering the swarms of locusts that are destroying the harvest that Yahshua said that was ready to be processed. So we've taken a look at a couple of things. The first one in some changes that we need to consider. The second one was ideas that we need to prepare before what's going to happen in this 6th chapter of Joel. But, or not 6th chapter, I'm sorry, this 6th verse of Joel. So we've discussed the issues and the adverse effects that both Judaism and Christianity have caused in cluttering the path that allows us to have a relationship with Yahweh Elohim. Now in this study, we're going to consider a very serious threat to the fruitfulness of seeking Elohim. You know, I don't talk too much about using the books of the prophets as crystal balls, but when we discuss the types for the watchman last time, we have to understand that things are changing, and that Joel here is giving us an example of some of the things that are changing and some of the things that we need to be watchful for. So this 6th verse of the 1st chapter of Joel gives us an insight and a warning. So that being said, let's talk to our Elohim, and then we'll take a look at this 6th verse. But Master Yahweh, we thank you for this time together. We ask today that you'll open our eyes, open our ears, and open our hearts so that we can see, hear, and understand what your word has to tell us. And we thank you for it all in the name of Yahshua. Amen. So this 6th verse of Joel 1 says, "For a people has come up upon my land, mighty and without number. His teeth are the teeth of a lion, and he has the jaw teeth of a lioness." Now, Yirmiyahu or Jeremiah also had something to say about this, and this was in Jeremiah chapter 4, verse 7, and he says, "A lion has come up from his bush, and the destroyer of nations is on his way. He has departed from his place to make your land a ruin. Your cities are laid waste without inhabitant." So this is a serious thing. Now, this verse begins with the word ki, that aside from meaning for, literally it means because. And the next word in the verse is goy, that in the verse it's used for people. Literally, goy means nations, or it would also mean a swarm of locusts. So if we consider the letters that make up this word ki, we see the kaf that represents blessing, and the yod that represents the truth, power, and the ability of Yahweh Elohim. So we can say that within the ki, we see the blessing of the truth of Yahweh. Now, if we combine what we've considered to this point, we can formulate an initial idea. The idea is not going to mean a whole lot, but it's an idea that says, because the swarm of locusts, the blessing in the truth of Yahweh, something. So, I'll say this doesn't really give us a complete picture of what we need to understand. But before we go further, let's consider that there were 8 plagues in Egypt. Or there were 10 plagues in Egypt. The hail was the 8th plague in Egypt, and it was the hail that destroyed the flax and the barley that were still in the field. The locust was that plague. Did I just say that right? It was the hail that destroyed the initial bunch of fruit. Then came the locust as the 8th plague, and they destroyed the flax and the barley that was left in the field. There we go. I think I finally got it out. So the next word to consider is Allah, that is used for has come up. This word also means to rise up, to be inserted, to be roused, and to become active. Now keep those definitions in mind as we go through this whole study. And one more time, to rise up, to be inserted, to be roused, and to become active. Those are something that we need to understand and be aware of today as well. Now, if we consider that the locusts destroy crops, then we might consider that the locusts are rising up, inserting themselves into the fields, and then being roused or becoming more active in destroying the truth of Yahweh. So we see that maybe it's not just locusts that we're looking at. Maybe there's something else in the locust, the idea of locust, that also means goyim, that means nation. It really doesn't mean people. The word for people is am, but it can mean people down a long list of definitions. So if we consider that there's a human element involved in this, now, if this is a true statement, then we can understand the absolute need to be watchful as well as being versed in the truths of the Scriptures. If we consider 8 to give us the choice in the het, we say the het as a letter represents a wall. The first time that we see the het as a root of a word in the Torah is in the word chebe, where Ish and Isha hid themselves from Elohim. Chebe means to hide. And het being one of the words for sin in Hebrew, then the first choice is to stay hidden behind the wall of transgression until it becomes sin. Or we also know that the het is composed of the vav, which represents humankind, yoked to the zayin, which represents the nourishment, protection, and rest that we find in the Word. So the other choice is that we can seek Yahweh Elohim by yoking ourselves to His Word. Then we have to consider what we're about to discuss very seriously. Now, there were 8 people that went into the ark. And I know we talk about this quite a bit, but it's something that's, in comparison to what we're about to consider, is very important. There were 8 people that went into the ark. The world had a choice. It could go into the ark or it could stand outside in the rain. We said that the rain falling down was literally the pure word of Elohim, but it was the floodwaters that came up that killed them. That they went into the ark in order to take care of the clean and unclean. And again, we repeat this because it's going to be very important in the balance of the study. When we go into the word, teve, Eliezer, the Rabbi Eliezer said that this word for ark also meant word. When we go into the word, we gain the knowledge, the wisdom, and the understanding that we need in order to bring us into the presence of Yahuwah Elohim. We learn the difference between the clean and the unclean. In Jeremiah 5:12, and I know we're in Joel, so why are we going to Jeremiah? Jeremiah 5:24 says, "And they do not say in their heart, let us now revere Yahuwah our Elohim, who gives rain both the former and the latter in its season. He guards for us the law, or the decree, the ordinance, and the appointment of Shavuot of harvest." Why? What does this have to do with anything? We have the word for rain that occurs 2 times in a row in this verse. The first time that appears in this verse, it's spelt, let me find it here right quick. It is spelt Vav, Yod, Resh, Hey, and there's a little bitty kaf behind it. So, Vayireh, with a little bitty kaf. Now, the next time it's spelt Yod, Vav, Resh, Hey, with a kof, a little bitty kof behind it. And y'all are looking at me like I'm off my rocker. The Vav, if we say, represents humankind. The word is Yoreh, that means rain. But if we have the Vav in front, Ve Yoreh, meaning and the rain, and we have this little bitty kof in the Hebrew, we see this little bitty kof that, we say, why is it there? There's blessings there. It represents the potential for blessing, but humankind is outside. It hasn't entered in. And when humankind enters into the ark, we have this word again, Yoreh, because this time the Vav can be used as the O. But when it enters in, we see this kof that is composed of the Vav with the kaf. So we see this picture of the kaf, the blessing of Elohim over humankind, if they will enter in, basically, and get out of what's pouring down so that they can understand more. Everybody with me? If you look at it in the Hebrew, if you can get a hold of it in the Hebrew, it'll make more sense. I guess I should have drawn it in the board, but, you know. But we have a choice to enter into the word of Elohim and thoroughly understand or not. The kof also means to set apart or to separate. And that's also our choice, is that we can enter into the word of Elohim, learn the difference between what is and what is not, and be set apart to Elohim. Or we can not do that and then separate ourselves from him, distance ourselves from him. So an important thing to consider as we move into this study. Now, the next word that we run into in our verse is al, and it's used in this verse to say upon, but it also means against, and it is against Aretz, that means my land. Now, it's Yahuwah who's saying against my land. This is Elohim's land. Now, the root of this word is Eretz, that aside from land also means earth and ground. And this ground belongs to Yahuwah Elohim. Consider that Yahuwah formed the Adam from the dirt of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the Adam became a living soul, a living being. So if we take this into consideration, then we can formulate an idea that the word Aretz, meaning my land, that in that word Elohim is referring to humankind, and that he is speaking in a possessive way, as a father would speak about his children. Okay? This is my land, and we always say, well, he's talking about the land of Israel. But this is Torah. This is an instruction to us. How does it apply to us? If I say, I am Israel, that I have established that Elohim is greater than I am in my life, then he's talking about me because I have believed and received his word, and as such I have the authority to be called a child of Elohim. And this is what Yochanan tells us in chapter 1, or John tells us in chapter 1. So this is an important point to consider, because as we move along in the book of Yoel, we're going to find that we too must specifically acknowledge Yahuwah as our Elohim in order to be redeemed, delivered, and restored back to a true relationship with him. Literally, this is what it says. And when we get to that point, it says, those who call on the name of Yahuwah will be restored, delivered. And then Peter says it when he's talking to that first group in Acts. Those who call on the name of Yahuwah will be redeemed, delivered, restored. And then Paul, in his letters, reinforces it again. So it's a very important thing that we understand, that we have to have a very point-specific relationship with our Elohim. And some people say that that's nitpicking, but I didn't write the Torah, he did. So, and this is what the Torah tells us. So, the next word in the verse is atzum, that means strong. This word also means powerful. The similar root of atzum is atzam, that means to break or to crush the bones. Now, we go and we read that it's saying, for a people has come up upon my land, mighty, powerful. So, something that crushes the bones. So we go back to Bereshis, and we consider that the Adam said, this is now flesh of my flesh and bone of my bones. She shall be called Isha because she was taken from Ish. And again, kind of refreshing, we recall that Ish represents the physical component of worship, and Isha represents the spiritual side of Adam that comes from that worship. Then we can formulate an idea here that this swarm of locusts is powerful enough to break and crush the true worship of the children of Yahuwah Elohim, and in doing so, bring forth a spiritual manifestation that is alienated from Yahuwah. Now, if you break the worship, you damage the spirit. If we allow things that don't belong in our worship to come into our worship, we get a spiritual manifestation that is separated from Elohim. Yahshua was very clear. The Father is seeking those who will worship him in spirit and in truth. So here is something coming that breaks the bones. It breaks the worship so that something happens to the spirit that is developed in this particular manifestation. Which brings us to the word misbar, which means number, but comes from the root safar, that means to recount and to tell. The Arabic word for the recounting or the telling is Quran. Is it possible that this has something to do with the swarm of locusts, that if not stopped will reduce the harvest to nothing? Islam is currently the fastest growing religion in the world. However, Muhammad was not really enthused with the Catholicism of his day, and he wasn't really enthused with the Judaism of his day. The Arabic tribes that existed at that time were in constant conflict with each other and had a multitude of deities. So he took a little bit of Judaism and he took a little bit of Catholicism and mixed it in with a few of these Arabic beliefs, and he combined these concepts and mixed them up and came up with something that we know as Islam today. And then he said that the angel Gabriel gave it to him. Now, he's not the only one that had an angel or a messenger speak to him. These ideas that we're talking about here isn't specific to Islam. We have the Torah that tells us very specifically, or not the Torah, well, the Torah does tell us also that don't add to or take away. We have Paul that's saying, if a messenger from heaven or any other man preach any other gospel other than what we have shown you, let them be accursed. And I've just gotten ahead of myself, but this isn't specific to Islam. And this should generate questions, is what do I believe? Where did it come from? And does it line up with the Torah? So these are things that we have to consider. I said Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world, but there's something that's outpacing it, and that's called the progressive liberal mindset that is overtaking the world today, that says anything goes. So the next word in this verse is shinaiv, that means teeth, from the root shin, that means tooth, as well as to cut and to press. The letter shin represents to us the freedom from bondage found in adhering to Yahweh Elohim's point of view that is found in his word, or the slavery that comes from adhering to our own carnal point of view based on the enticements of the Satan. So this starts to give us ideas here. Is the Quran like the Book of Mormon, or even the liberal progressive mindset that has embedded itself in the minds of a younger generation? Are these enticements of the Satan? The next word is aryeh, that means lion, but also refers to violence. So if we consider that the phrase is shenei aryeh, that means the teeth of a lion, then with our expanded definitions, we see the pressure of or from violence. Now, it sounds like we're picking on Islam, but we're not really picking on Islam. Islam, although it considers itself to be a religion of peace, its history to present time is built on violence. And if we look at the news, we see violent protests we see a lot of violent protests after violent protests, mostly from those with a progressive mindset. We have people that want it this way, and the only way they know how to do it is by destroying their entire city. Not like it was back in the 60s where you protested, you marched, and you did it peacefully. Nowadays, that's changed. We're going to destroy everything and blame it on somebody else, and we call this entitlement now. And that's a new word that's kind of sprung up. Sounds like I'm picking on the establishment, but consider what is happening in our world. We've had a change in paradigm. We've eliminated Elohim from the picture, and now we're wondering why things are going so haywire. So before we draw any conclusions, let's examine the last phrase of this verse that says, and he has the jaw teeth of a lioness, which in Hebrew is umetaliot lavi lo. The word umetaliot refers to the jaw teeth, but in the verse, but from its root yala means to speak rashly, to talk wildly, to speak without consideration to others. The word used for lioness is lavi, that literally means to roar. And this word comes again from the root aryeh, that means lion or violence. Then we come to the word lo, that in this verse really doesn't have any definable meaning. This word, though, if we look at it, it has the lamed that means instruction or guidance, and we have the vav that means the flesh. So we're looking at the instruction or guidance that comes from the flesh, from carnality. So with these definitions, we can construct an idea of speaking rashly, talking wildly, and speaking without consideration to others while roaring violently, being led by our carnal mind. Now, it sounds like I'm picking on liberal progressivism. I don't know what else to call it, but it does exactly these things. So this verse is not specifically speaking about Islam. Considering the definitions, we might conclude that it is but one topic that we must consider, and there are many points of view that attack and influence the children of Yahuwah to stray away from him. In other words, to make the wrong choices in Shin. Something to consider is that Islam offers a deity with a name, while both Christianity and Judaism have abandoned the name of Yahuwah Elohim. Many people are influenced by the personal relationship that Islam offers with a deity that can be called by name, although Allah simply, it comes from an Aramaic word, Elohah, that comes from a Hebrew word, Elohim, that isn't a name, it's a title. But that really doesn't matter because they've built a deity and given it a name. So we are also told by the progressive mindset that all religions lead to God. There is no redemption, deliverance, or restoration to be found in any other name but Yahuwah. It is in the name above all names, or it is the name above all names. Kepha, or Peter, said that aside from Yahshua, there is no other name under heaven by which humankind must be redeemed, delivered, and restored. Yahshua means the redemption, deliverance, and restoration that comes from Yahuwah. And Yahshua said that false prophets would come and sway many away from Yahuwah Elohim. And again, it was Paul who warned that if a messenger from heaven or any man bring any other gospel other than the one found in the Bezorah of Yahshua HaNetzarim, that the messenger or the man would be cursed. Now, these are examples that were given well before Constantine. But Constantine came along and he saw a sign in the heavens, and as a result, he heavily influenced Christianity to step away from the Torah and into pagan worship. The doctrines that were developed influenced Judaism, as did the doctrines of the Greeks between Alexander and Antiochus. The messenger Gabriel is credited, or better said, discredited, for appearing to Muhammad and reciting to him the Quran. A messenger appeared to Joseph Smith and told him about another gospel written on tablets of gold. Mormonism was founded. There have been many revelations from heaven or from the Holy Spirit that have influenced people away from Yahuwah Elohim or even to death. And we consider among the many Jim Jones in Guyana, that people willingly went and took the poison. So verse 6 is not simply a warning about Islam, but it is a clear warning about being led away from, pressured away from, or even by threat of violence and ban forced away from the truth of Yahuwah and its blessings. If we are to be watchmen, Safarim, Shamarim, or Natzarim, then we must be prepared to withstand the many trials and tribulations that will come as we guard, protect, and preserve the word of Yahuwah, our Elohim. Otherwise, we will see the following verses that we're going to get into in Yoel begin to be revealed and played out before our very eyes. So, we're moving into the counting of the Omer. And during this counting of the Omer, we start to look at ourselves. We start to ask, where are we? But also, we talked about the Nazirite vow, that the Nazirite vow wasn't really all that big of a thing. We all do that. We all devote ourselves to Elohim. We all try to stray from the leaven. We all try to not allow ourselves to be influenced by the leaven. But we have to begin to look at ourselves and examine where we are And in this, ask ourselves, am I willing to be a watchman for Elohim? Will I seek to guard, protect, and preserve the truth found in the word of Yahuwah, my Elohim? It's kind of wordy,